on Facebook. We are live and super excited to be here today. I got an amazing guest. This is our first time going live to Fathers Matters in a very long time, and so we appreciate all of those that are tuning in right now. If you like this hat, go ahead and share this live video. Anybody that shares this live video will be, you are going to be entered into a raffle, right? We're going to be picking a winner. Fathers Matters hats is very, very sought after. And so real quick, we got to get the housekeeping out of the way. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guest and host and not necessarily reflect on the views of Lake County Media Group, Fathers Matters, or its affiliates. This program is for informational, educational purposes only and should not be considered legal, financial, or professional advice. Viewer discretion is advised as some topics may be sensitive. This episode of Lake County Unfiltered is proudly sponsored by the Community Works, an organization dedicated to building stronger families and uplifting communities through their support. We're able to spark important conversations, advocate for fathers, and create meaningful change. Thank you to the Community Works for helping us make a lasting impact. This episode is part of an exciting collaboration between Lake County Media Group, super excited to have their support, and Fathers Matters. We're coming together to highlight important stories, advocate for fatherhood, and inspire positive change in our communities. Together, we're amplifying voices and making a difference for families everywhere. And tonight, I'm super excited because we have the one, the only Dr. Robert Marshall in the building. And so we'll sit down for a powerful conversation about fatherhood and resilience. Robert will share how growing up without a father shaped his journey as a dad. In the life-changing moment, he confirmed the identity of his biological father. Every man and father should hear this story. Robert is the founder of Triumph Media and a man who turned his pain into purpose. From overcoming trauma and self-doubt to becoming a father, author of 14 books, that man be writing, and owner of 2 businesses. Robert's journey proves that no obstacle is too big to overcome. He's passionate about helping men, fathers, and families heal, grow, and reclaim their strength. So share this live video. Again, for those of you that are just tuning in, we're super excited. Go ahead. Anybody that shares this live video will be entered into a raffle to win a Fathers Matters hat. We'll send it directly to you. I'm wearing mine, and I'm going to make sure that Brother Marshall leaves, Robert leaves with one as well. So with that, welcome to the pod, man.
Hey, what's up, man? They done let me on the show. Yo, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm super excited to have you.
Good, man. It's cold outside.
It's cold outside. We are in the Midwest, and it is November.
Man,
so
it's light-skinned people season, brother.
And you're from down south, so you know, but you've been up here long enough. You should be used to it.
Matter of fact, I've lived up here longer than I've lived down south, bro.
Okay, man. Yeah.
So, yeah, man, we out here, and I love it. I love the area that I live in. And before we get started, I gotta give a huge shout out to my kids.
Yeah,
Caleb, Kaden, and Araya, my baby mama, wife of a long doggone time, Jackie, and to my barber, Yale B. And
Okay,
you
gotta shout
I
out
was
to
looking
barber.
rough earlier.
See, this is why I got the hat on.
Listen,
I'm
I was
not
gonna
just
be
promoting Fathers Matters. I'm also covering up what's going on up top.
I gotta give it up to my barber. Since I moved in this area, I've had one solid barber,
That's
man.
what's up,
and
man.
I wasn't gonna be able to get into him today. He saw the Facebook, he saw the joint on Instagram, and text me, was like, "Hey, you supposed to be on this tonight?" He's like, "Hey, slide through, come." And so, yeah, B, thank you, bro. I appreciate the best barber in Waukegan.
Well, shout out, like you said, that's that promo. That's how you got to take care of your barber.
Let's go.
But we're here and we talk about Fathers Matters, and so just a little background to those of you who may not know, Fathers Matters was started in 2013. It was actually on the back of something that was fairly tragic. So, south side of Chicago, young lady, Hadia Pendleton, was leaving school. It was unseasonably warm. We said it's cold, so it was December. Actually, it might have been January, but it was January because she had just a couple weeks before that marched at President Obama's second inauguration. And she and some friends went through the park, and they decided it started to rain. So they sought shelter in a pavilion south side of Chicago, just hanging out, waiting for the rain to pass. and a young man in the car thinks he sees somebody that he's into a beef with, shoots into a crowd of kids. These are 16, 17-year-old sophomores, juniors, and killed Hadia Pendleton.
Wow.
And there was a lot of backlash and outrage, and rightfully so, about the incident. And the thing that stuck to me is, and you wrote an article, which we'll get to, about the impact of fatherlessness, right? It's because we talk about Hadia. Her family has done some great work in keeping her memory alive and combating gun violence in the city of Chicago. But you also reflect that was another young man who lost his life, who made that decision. And so while the news media was clear to cover this honor student who marched in Obama's parade, it was just as sad and tragic to me, the young man who made the decision to pull that trigger and who lost his life. And so it burdened me to the point that I said, what can I do? I can't change the world. I'm not, but what can I do? And what, as a teen father, I had my first son at 16, second at 18. Many in my group of friends also had children, and we're all involved at various levels, right? Some of us were really committed to this fatherhood thing, and some of us were not pulling our own weight.
I was having sex young.
See, this is the past thing you say, all I can say was out there. But yeah, and that's kind of what we did. And for me, it was, how can we make sure that at least in my circle, no dead weight, right? Yeah. So we all are stepping up for our kids, and we started Fathers Matters with 10 brothers as a daddy and me group. And so now we have over 1.2 million followers on Facebook. Yes. A lot of different people reach out to us for support, and so we're super excited. And so this is the next evolution of that. And so I think it's only fitting, given your most recent article and just what I know about your story, to have you on as our official first guest. So
Thank you, man.
Dope.
I appreciate it. I'm honored. First of all, I tried to share some stuff in this group many times, and I think it was denied. But it was denied. It's all right. It was cool. It was cool. But now that I know you, I understand why. You got to keep it pure. But, man, this challenge, this journey to fatherhood has been very interesting for me. Growing up without a father, not knowing who my father was, been searching for my father for 20 plus years, trying to figure it out. I tell people all, and here's the thing. I've never exclusively talked about this ever. I've talked about a lot of things, but this area of fatherhood has always been that one kind of black hole in my life. We grow up, when you don't have a father, you grow up trying to prove yourself, trying to measure up,
100%.
Trying to get people to see you, to hear you, to say, hey, you're worth something, because the one person that you want to be in the room isn't there for whatever reason, whether it's death, whether it's they just choose not to be there, whether it's circumstantial, whatever it is. But the thing is, you grow up as a boy feeling unsafe, feeling not seen, feeling not heard, and not valued. And when you feel that way, you do a lot of things trying to gain love, affirmation, safety, and support from places that don't have the capacity to typically give it to you.
Yeah, you opened up talking about your own children.
Yeah.
And so 3?
I have 3 children.
3 children.
I got 2 boys and a girl.
2 boys and a girl.
Yeah,
I got
man.
3 boys. Like
Listen,
I say, so you got your girl.
I didn't start at 15 now, but
see,
but
but you got to look at it this way. I'll be done at 40. My baby is 9.
You're right.
But it is kind of share how growing up without a father shaped your own perspective on fatherhood.
Man, to be honest, I was always jealous of friends and people who grew up with fathers. Growing up for me, I fell into a lot of stupid stuff. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse, sexual trauma, also just bullying, not very confident, didn't have a lot of discipline in my life, and I believe a lot of those situations happened was because I was looking for a daddy. I was looking for a man to protect me, to see value in me. So I played sports like everybody else. I sang, I danced, I was in church. I did all the things. I learned how to perform very well because I was looking for somebody to want me. I was looking for my father to want me, a man to want me, and it never happened. And I wound up being in spaces where men who were supposed to protect me, big brothers and mentors, wound up being sexual predators. Now, that's not everybody's story, but that's my story. And a lot of the work that I do stems out of that space where we believe that 80% of Black and Latino males in urban communities worldwide have experienced some form of sexual abuse, sexual trauma.
And I think that's important is because when we talk about sexual assault, and we look at that issue, most of the time it's always about protecting our young ladies and our girls, and that's critically important, right? I'm not disputing that, but your experience and the work that you do around male survivors of sexual assault is super important if you want to speak to some of that work.
Yeah, man. And so I've been doing this work since 2019. I've written a book called Echoes, The Stories of Male Survivors Overcoming Sexual Trauma. We're working on a documentary. We've done it all. And matter of fact, we're gearing up for the Survivors Bash in Chicago, downtown, the Survivor Circle, November 30th. Hey, be there if y'all, listen, it's all survivor communities. But man, that work I am the leading voice as it relates to male advocacy when it comes to male sexual abuse. For me, I believe fatherlessness was one of the main reasons why I wound up in a lot of situations that could have been prevented if I had a father there to say, hey, no, we're not doing that, or someone there to protect me. Because here's the thing, we teach our children how to look out for people who are weird or strangers, but our research shows us that most boys are introduced to sex prematurely, not by strangers, not by the person with the candy, but if they're a single parent, so our research shows that if they're a boy growing up in a single parent household with a mom, typically the one that may be sexually exploiting him may be a babysitter, maybe an auntie, maybe an uncle, maybe one of their mom's single friends or married friends. Right. And so then introduced to sex prematurely or sexually abused by a babysitter or somebody who's very close to the family.
And this wasn't even the direction, but it's super important. Yeah. And why I want to speak to it is because I think Charlemagne talks about this in his book, and where a lot of times when we're talking about it, and we have to, as fathers, that's what this show is, change the conversation around sexual assault, right? Yeah. It's because even when we use that word, there's so much, such a heavy weight that is tied behind it. But when surveyed, right, and you ask a lot of men would they have their first sexual experience, a lot of times it's very, very early, right? So between 9 and 15, and like, and you talked about that, but also, and you asked, well, what was the age of the person that you first engaged in sex with? And we may not, she was 20, she was 21, she was 24. She was but 30, you were a kid.
But you were a kid. Yeah. And so I always ask the question to my guys or people, because a lot of men, our research shows a lot of men don't identify as survivors and may never, because they don't ever see themselves as victims. And I don't like to use that word, but they don't see themselves as that, because they ask themselves, number one, how could this be abuse when it felt good? Or I ejaculated, or I got I got an erection, so their body responded. But just because your body responds does not mean that it was, what's the word I'm looking for? That it was acceptable or appropriate. Right. And so cognitively not having the wherewithal to make these type of decisions. And here we go, we are thinking that this is something that is good, that this is something, no. But research shows us that most men don't identify as abuse until almost 25 years after it's happened. It's when you really sit back and say, yo, I was 13, I was 9. And my homie's mom or sister or auntie or babysitter was 25, 30, 35, 40, right? Especially, I always ask this question. Man, any brothers, I want you to sit back and think, and I'm not trying to trigger anybody, but I want you to go and ask your guys, hey, when was the first time that you had sex? When was the first time? How old were you? How old was the person that you had? And I'm sure all of us can go and ask ourselves or ask our remember back in the day, our homie that was, smashing this older woman who was, right, and it was something we celebrated. Like a bad or when we talk about student athletes and coaches who, there's a word that we don't use called grooming, where a person is led on, that is mature, that is like almost spoon-fed into believing that the person who is going to abuse them is their friend, is somebody who wants the best for them, and they keep them entrapped by secrets. And so they wind up grooming them because they feel guilty about whatever they did, whatever they were allowed to do. And so now their secret has ensnared them into a sexual relationship that they don't want and don't know how to get out of.
Yeah, we gonna jump early because this is a dad tip, but this is something that I've been seeing is to make sure that we are monitoring our kids' social medias, right? It's because I work in the financial industry, and one of the things that we see is people, the young boys, and it can happen to girls too, but it's particularly targeting our young men who get into these virtual friendships, relationships with people in gaming boards and chat rooms, doing what some young men do. They send a picture of themselves or do something, right? Now that individual has that information and they threaten to, if you don't give me money or you don't do these things, I'm going to expose you. And so as a father, also being in the financial industry and seeing how our young men and boys can be exploited, even in something as simple as like them wanting to build friendships with somebody, right? It makes it where as parents, we have to be that much more involved. So
I think the key was involved. One things that I'm really grateful about my wife was that when it came to our kids, one of the things that she actually helped me as a father was to put boundaries on my kids as it relates to technology. And so one of the rules in our house is right now, my kids do not have iPhones, tablets, or games during the week. And so they have to do their schoolwork. We have them in all these extracurricular activities. They're playing football. My son plays for the Waukegan Bulldogs. They just went to the Super Bowl.
Congrats.
My other son is in boxing at Angels Boxing Academy, and he's killing it as well. My daughter's in dance. And so to be honest, as a father, I was upset a little bit because when my wife was like, no YouTube during the week, no games.
That means you got to be the entertainment.
Why I got to struggle? Why am I suffering? I didn't do anything wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But man, to see my kid, it gives me as a father an opportunity to engage with them in ways that to be honest, I'm not used to. I'm not used to being present. I think for me as a father, in my head, it was, I'm here. Right. Isn't that enough?
Yeah. And I will say, we should aspire to be more, but there is something to say about the statistics of just having a male in the household. But we know all of the reasons why sometimes that's not able to be possible. Now, recently, and part of why we wanted to have this conversation, and you started off with speaking to it, is was it a 25-year journey?
25-year journey.
Yeah, to find your biological father. So, I mean, you talk about, and you wrote the article of fatherlessness, you said, but I do want to kind of get into that is one, we talked about the void a little bit and the impact that had on you. But many times there are many men who and that's just the norm. They never take the next step to try and figure out who their father is. So what led you down that journey to discovery?
It started, number one, it started when I was a kid. I just knew, I grew up believing that my biological father was deceased. That's what I grew up believing. That's what I was told, that my biological father was dead. And so I grew up mourning a father that I never knew but always wanted. Then later on in my journey, I thought that we have actually found my biological father. And I believed that from age 23 up until a few months ago. And the guy that we believed was my father, we had no real proof, but all the stories lined up like, hey. And so we would talk maybe once a year, no more than 3 minutes from 23, and I'm 34 now. And the reason why was because he didn't want his wife to know that he had another son because he was married and had his own kids. And so, man, for that period of my life, I was getting degrees, going to school, but had this father that wanted to keep me a secret and was ashamed of me, which made me internally ask the question, why am I not good enough? And I always ask the question, why wouldn't somebody want me as a son? I'm like, I've gone to school, I'm successful, I've done this, I'm doing this. And so it made me very performance driven, again, achieving great things, but for the wrong reason, looking to be loved, looking to be accepted, looking to be affirmed. And man, it's wild. A few months ago, this is a few months ago, bro. It's fresh. I get this, I'm on Ancestry.com. I get all these hits, and there's this one hit of this guy, this kid, this person that comes up, and has the highest level of relation that I've ever had. I've always seen second cousins, third cousins, fourth and sixth. And so I reach out, do some digging, and then I leave it alone for a little bit. I reach out, didn't get much. And so then a few weeks later, I get this inbox on Instagram saying, hey, I believe my grandfather was your dad. And I'm like, I'm like, wait a minute. So they send me a photo, and I see the photo. I send the photo to my mom. I send the photo to my sister. And I'm like, hey, without any reference, I'm like, hey, do you know this person? I'm going to make it, long story short, they both knew who this person was. And it blew me because this was a random Instagram person that I did not know that was sending me this.
They knew the person that reached out to you.
No, they didn't know the person who reached out to me. They knew the photo of the guy.
Understood.
That was sent to me. And they called him by name, knew who he was. And I'm like, wait a minute, you all know this random guy. But what they didn't know was that there was already conversation about this guy actually potentially being my father. And so the family and I started reaching out. We started talking, and we did some more tests to see, if this was a thing. And brother, it all came back.
Wow.
It all came back. And this is a few weeks ago. So it is still very fresh. I'm trying not to cry.
No, I got you.
Because here's the thing. When you've been looking for something so long, to be honest, I was looking without expectation. I didn't expect to find anything. I didn't expect for anybody. But what I found that I got a 66-year-old sister, or between 63 and 66-year-old sister, who has a heart of gold, who when we talked, she's like, my brother. She's like, I know you're my brother. I love you. We accept you. She's the matriarch of the family. Then I had nieces and nephews who are like, hey, Uncle Rob, and some of them are way older than me. They are if my father was alive, he would have been, I think, anywhere between 97 and 100 years old. And so I'm like, it's weird. It is such a weird placement. But I have nieces and nephews who are throughout the country who have accepted me with open arms. And it's weird at 34 to be building these relationships with new sisters. And I found out I had brothers, and I had I'm still in shock. I'm still in shock. I'm sure you can feel that energy. I'm still in shock, man. But it's been a journey, and to be honest, navigating that as a father has been very, fatherhood didn't come easy to me. And one of the reasons that started me on this journey, to answer your question, was that I remember when I had my two boys, I remember sitting them in the car and we were driving, and I just started feeling this disgust towards them. They were really small, but I realized later, identified it as jealousy. I was jealous of my sons. I love my sons, and if you know me, my kids are my world, but I was jealous of them, and it was becoming bitterness, and I realized I was mourning the fact that they had the father I always wanted but never would have had.
And that's such an important thing. And you talk about name that feeling. And I think so many times as men, we suppress that instead of saying, no, this is what it is. Now I can do something about it. And kind of discovering that journey for yourself. I think that is that's so important. And the fact that you were able to find acceptance, not from your father, who, as far as you know, he didn't know you existed.
I don't think he did. Some say maybe, some say maybe not. We don't know that yet. He's gone on to be with the Lord. So, but to know now, and here's the other part that I'm journeying through. I spent all these years looking for my father, not realizing that when I even though I wasn't able to meet him, I was able to meet his family. And I wasn't looking for another family.
And this is one of those, if it's too sensitive or not too sensitive, and you're navigating those relationships, right? But you, a man of the cloth.
I'll answer. Yeah,
he
was a man of the cloth.
Right?
Yo.
So what? How did that also is like even in your own trajectory and journey, and how did you kind of deal with coming to that understanding?
So first of all, a man of the cloth. Like some people, all of our cloths are dirty. That's first of all of our cloths are dirty. It's dingy. And so, man, when it to be honest, one of my biggest issues as a man was never having a point of reference. Everything that I have, everything I've built is either I had to create it or God sent other mentors and men in my life who I love dearly, who have been father figures for me. So at this point, I was no longer looking for a daddy, but I was looking for a point of reference. I'm a storyteller. I didn't know a part of my story. And so, man, this part was crazy to me because I never had the point of reference. And when my sister started telling me about who he was, for the first time in my life, I felt like I had the point of reference. My sister started telling me, man, our dad was a preacher, but our dad was a writer. Our dad, he helped young men who were incarcerated, who couldn't get out. He was the plug. If boys or men needed help, like they would go to dad. And he was like, our dad was a prophetic man. Like he was calling out people's names and he did all these things. Now he wasn't perfect. Right. Of course. And so, but what it did for me was it gave me a point of reference to say, I'm a writer. I'm an author.
Right.
I'm a speaker.
Right.
I'm a preacher.
And you see
I'm
where it came
empowering
from.
boys
Yeah.
and men. And I'm like, it's crazy how I never met this man a day in my life. But these are the words of my sister, Gina. She said, I thought my father's legacy or mantle was dead. But to see he had another son that never met him, that continues to walk in the gifts and the graces that was on his life, she said it puts her in awe. And it's the same with my mom too. My mom is an amazing preacher, amazing woman of cloth. I love her to life. She's my mentor when it comes to preaching and whatnot. And so, like, to see those two powerful pieces of DNA come together, it's been powerful, man.
So, and if you guys are just tuning in, I know not everybody's been with us. We're having
There's
a
drama today,
super
boy.
important conversation. The impact of fatherlessness, finding and discovering our fathers, and then being fathers. We both have three kids. If you share this video, you'll be entered for an opportunity to win your own Fathers Matters hat. So go ahead and share this live video.
I get one of those, right?
Yes, you get one of these.
Okay, cool.
So
Cool.
all the guests coming on the show get their Fathers Matters hat, and so we really appreciate those of you that are tuning in, and we will try and get to comments. So leave those comments if you got questions. There's been a lot of feedback already, and so I appreciate you sharing. And so. So in your own experience, right, and with you going through this journey and even with some of your writing, what do you believe is the most important lesson that a father can teach his children?
That's a layered question.
It is very layered.
I would say this, to love God, love themselves, and to love others. I was faced with this when at a young age, my oldest son was being bullied, and when we moved to Chicago, Waukegan, he actually got jumped, and it crushed me. And I saw this happy kid who was happy all the time start to be angry, start to be sad, and scared. And I have a mixed kids, and my son, he's an amazing kid. And I saw him being bullied. I saw him being called all types of derogatory terms. At 3 years old, he was being called nigger already. He was being it was crazy. And so that's actually what inspired me to write my first book, my first children's book, Little Brown Boy. And in Little Brown Boy, I had to ask myself, if I was to leave today, what are the core lessons that I would want my son to know so that he could make it through life? And the first one was he could do anything he puts his mind to. There's no limitations. Number two, to be kind. God has blessed him with a big brain, and that I want him to think big, but I want him to dream bigger. The next thing was to know that he was loved, that he was cared for, and that he has a community who will be there with him regardless of what happens to him. To also look in the mirror and speak up for himself. Don't allow people to run over you. Don't allow other people to tell your story. Own your story, own your truth, own your power, and show up and be whoever you want to be. The next thing was to make sure that I wanted him to be sure that there will be people in this world who do not like him because of whatever reason, but that doesn't change who he is and who he was created to be. Show up, be courageous, be strong, and be great.
And the fact that your son can go and say, "My pops wrote a book for me," I think that's powerful.
That was a point of reference, man.
And you can purchase that
Little
book
Brown
on is it Amazon?
Yeah, Little Brown. All the books are
all
on
the books.
on
Anywhere
Amazon.
you go and get your books.
Yes, sir. Little Brown Boy.
Speaking of that, how can fathers break cycles of trauma and create healthier family dynamics?
Honesty.
Oh, that's what we call
Honesty
it.
and transparency. Man, we've lost a lot of people over the last 2 years, and one of the things I was determined to do was to allow my kids to see me vulnerable, to see me cry, to see me when I treat my wife not as I should. In moments, I had those moments where they'll see me say, "You know what? I'm sorry, babe. I did not mean to do that. That was my fault. I shouldn't have done this." I apologize to my kids when I'm tripping or when they're trying to explain something and I'm too heated in the moment and I'm not. No, you be quiet. I'm talking. And then when they talk and they're right and I'm wrong, and
you mean you can be humble enough to admit that you're
I'll
not
go back
always
and
right,
say, "Hey,
Pops"?
I'm so sorry, Daddy," but to be honest and transparent. One of the reasons why I even started this journey with my father about, continued the journey because I wanted to give up a lot of times was that my children, my wife being who she is, she knew who her family was, knew who her grandparents were, knew all of that. My children would look at me and say, "Daddy, who's your daddy?" And I would just freeze up because I didn't have an answer for them. And so part of that and I had to learn how to say, Daddy doesn't know who his daddy is, but we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so just being honest, man.
I think that's very powerful and something that we can learn as men. I remember, and this is when you talk about that trauma, and I wouldn't even call it a generational curse. It's because it manifested its way, just like you said, in some things that were actually fairly beneficial for me, right? And so I knew who my grandfather was, James Ewing, my first superhero. I knew who my father was, very involved in my life, Ronell Ewing. And so I had those very clear examples, as well as a lot of men, my dad's friends, my grandfather's friends, even the church that when we came to Waukegan that we participated in. One of the things that always stood out to me is the amount of men, right, that brought their families to church. And so there was always a blueprint. But my father, before I would go to preschool, was one of my earliest memories. And he would pick me up and I would stand on the toilet and he would say, "Who are you?" And I would say, "I was a Ewing man." And he said, "As a Ewing man, we don't," and I would repeat, "we don't set the standard, or we don't follow the standard, we set the standard," right? And so that was this belief, one, that I was special. Yes, I could do anything, but it created that same kind of performance drive, that same kind of perfectionist mindset. Is because if you carry that Ewing lineage, then you have to be different. You have to be special. And so when I was out here having sex at 16, right, that wasn't a conversation that I was having with my pops. It's because it was something that I was concealing, something that I was hiding. It's because I didn't believe that I could be transparent. But then as you grow up, you start to realize, hey, Granddaddy struggled with some of the same things. And if he had been open and transparent about some of those things, maybe I would have felt more comfortable. Hey, Pops had some of these different characteristics. And while both of them were great and inspiring and helped me become the man that I am, it's like, man, I wish we wouldn't have had these conversations at 25 and 28 about the mistakes that they made, but that we had these conversations earlier. So I love what you talked about as far as transparency.
Even
and just
now,
honesty.
man, because of what I've experienced, I've already had the sex talk with my 8-year-old, 7-year-old son, because by that time, these kids wilding out here. You don't know what's happening.
That's true.
And so, I've had those conversations. They are one of the I cannot stress to parents. If we have to take back the right to teach our kids about their bodies and about sex and about sexuality more than ever, because in the school systems, in special, regardless of what we believe, how we believe, if it does not come from you first, it will come from somebody else. And once that tone has been set, you will have to try to backtrack. But if you go and take the initiative and teach your sons and your daughters about sex, about their bodies, and how they need to carry themselves, what they're supposed to be, and not calling it kid names or whatever, call it what it is, so that they can know about their bodies, they can express if something is happening to them, and so that they just are aware. And when somebody else tries to teach them, indoctrinate them with something, they have you as the point of reference.
And I will say that's one of the most challenging things for me, in that I love it because we've created that environment. My oldest is 16 now. My second oldest is 14, and I got a 9-year-old. And so my 16 and my 14-year-old, we had some conversations. I'm like, dang, I don't really want to know. But God. I can't in the moment react that way. I just got to listen. And I'm like, I would have never told my dad this. I would have never brought this or had this conversation. And so I'm super appreciative of that. And we got a few more questions before we get to the next segment. But yeah, kind of. As someone, you wrote 14 books, built 2 successful businesses. You have pastored, right, a church congregation before. But how do you balance your professional and personal life as a father?
Let me tell you, bro, there is no balance. I don't care what anybody tells you. Read whatever book you want. To be honest, there is no balance. Now, I do have a rhythm. I have a rhythm, and the rhythm is based upon seasons. It's based upon money. It's based upon goals. And I would not be able to do it without my wife, because who is amazing. I've been married to her for now 11 years. And so here's the truth is, I live by this rule: render to Caesar what is Caesar, and I render to God what is God's. That is my framework. I was taught that for consistent bills, it requires consistent money. So for my consistent bills, I'm going to work. I'm going to make sure that I have income that meets the needs of the consistent needs of my house. I also had a mentor that taught me that you will have to work during the day, and you're going to have to build that dream at night. And so I work during the day. Whenever I'm at work, the Community Healing Resource Center, shout out to y'all, CHRC Live Free. When I'm at work, I'm at work. That's what I'm doing. I'm not working on my dream. I'm not working on my stuff. I'm working on my company stuff. When I'm there, I excel. I do what I need to do. The moment that I walk from out of that door, then it's family time. So from that time, I normally don't do interviews, conversations, phone calls, and if I do, my wife tripping. And so it's like,
so that's where you get the balance from.
It's like, hey, like, yo, no, and she helps because my kids, they're at the age now where they call me out on it. And so from that 6 to 8:30 time, and so part of that was making sure that my kids had a consistent bedtime. My kids go to bed at 8:30 every day on the dot. They will stay up. We allow them to stay up on the weekends a little longer. But from the moment that they get out of school, from 3:45, from 4 o'clock to 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, that is family time. That my job will tell you, you will not get me on the phone. I will not do an interview. I won't do a podcast. I won't do a meeting. I won't do a phone call. When my kids go to bed at 8:30, now depends upon what the missus wants. If 8:30 and she's working, doing her thing, or she wants time, then that's our time. But typically around 8:30, 9:30, 10 o'clock, Robert is clocking into Dream World. So I don't sleep until maybe sometimes 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's a whole nother job by that time. But I'm building something that will last. That's how I've been able to do it. So there's not balance. And sometimes it's not healthy, so I don't do it. I go to sleep. When my body say, hey, bro, go to sleep, but I lay it down.
I think that's important, as we both are busy individuals, right? And one thing that I tell oftentimes is because in my career, I've grown to a level in which people are, now I'm the dude they come to and they seek advice.
Right.
And I said, work-life balance is a lie.
Yeah.
It's called work-life integration.
Yeah.
Everybody won't tell you that. But one of the things I've been doing, especially as my sons get older, is for them to see what I do.
Yeah.
Meaning I may not have time to sit down and say, come sit here, let's have a conversation. But it's the same way I learned from my grandfather. Is my grandfather had he would lease his Monte Carlos, and so every 2 years he would get a new one. And always that's just what I remember. And he would say, "Hop in the back." If he was going to Sam's Club, I was going to Sam's Club.
Yep.
If he was running to the church,
Yes, sir.
you know, whatever it was, is I was in that car, and he wasn't a here. Let me sit down and teach you something. What my grandfather would do, and it is he made the best ribs.
Yeah, man.
And ribs take long.
Yes, sir.
And I was the kid at 6 a.m. We making ribs, Grandpa. But in that, he was able to share his story, is because that time allowed him the opportunity to, as we were in that car, as he was taking me somewhere, as we were in those grocery stores, not only were I learning those skills about how to pick the best, you know, you got to make sure you use the baby back. We don't use that spare stuff. Those were the lessons that I would give him, but he was also imparting life lessons to me, right? When I stole a pack of bubble gum and I got outside and I said, Grandpa, look, I got the bubble gum. And he made me go back in there and apologize. And those wouldn't have happened without time spent. And so especially with my older two, is we're now at that point where my 16-year-old, I got 2 years. And that's why I tell him, I said, when I was your age, I was not only responsible for me, which is the best conversation I had with my dad. He said, you are my child. I had you. I'm responsible for you.
Yeah.
That's your baby. And you have to figure it out. And not, I'm here to support you. I'm here to walk beside you. But you got to grow up because you made grown man decisions.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate that conversation, is because it has allowed me, to your point, to figure out is I got to grind, right?
Yeah.
I still remember the first time I had my son by myself and I had worked a 12-hour shift. And as soon as I got in the house, my stepmom said, here, and it was on me.
Yeah.
And I think that's critically important. I appreciate you sharing, you know, how sometimes it's not, you know, sometimes we want to paint the narrative that you can have it all. And you talked about having a cadence and also
true.
boundaries. I think that's important.
That too. But even with my kids, man, I'm the same. Like my children, they all know how to work. My kids know how to cook flat out. Like they know how to cook. Why? Because I cook in my house almost every day. So my kids, I can say, now they're at the point where I can say, hey, go put on this, go get the stove, go get the whatever. They know how to fry food. They know how to bake food. Important. They know how to grill. They know how to do all the, because my thing is, as a father, I'm like, I want to teach you as many life skills that I can before you get up out of this house. You need to know how to cook. You need to know how to care for yourself. You need to have a skill. My children already are picking up cameras. They're already picking up computers. I got a son who just wrote a song the other day. He's writing song. My son has written 5 books already. Like it's we're about that life. Yeah. You know, so.
But they got a great example.
And they got a great, I can't take all the credit.
Of course.
Because they have an amazing mom who is there, who's killing too.
And our last question on this, segment, we'll hit the other ones real quick because I do want to get your opinion on something. But for fathers who are watching this interview, what is one actionable step that they can take today to grow as a parent?
I would say number one, read. Read. There's a number of resources out there about parenthood, but also one of the best things is that you can choose to start healing for you and your children. A lot of times I realize that we parent out of fear, and we parent out of what we're parenting out of is not healthy. And so we become very toxic in the way that we raise our kids. I realize, now this, everybody may not agree, but for me, I realized that a lot of my responses towards my kids was centered in an enslaved mindset, where I would make certain things, I would say certain things to them that would be snappy. Hey, don't do that. Don't ask that question. Don't whatever. Realizing, asking myself, why am I doing that? And it sounded like somebody who was trying to protect their children in a very unsafe environment and trying to keep them from harm, not realizing hey, no, the way I'm talking to them causes harm. One of the greatest conversations I had with my son, he said, and I don't hit my kids too often. I don't really do that, but when my oldest son, when he would do certain things, and he would say, Dad, when you yell at me or you hit me like this, it makes me feel like you don't love me. And number one, I didn't know how to feel. I was proud of him because he was like 7 at the time. He was like, you know, when you say this or when you do this or if you hit me, it makes me feel like you don't love me. I'm like, nah, is this little dude being manipulative? And I realized, no, I understood what he was saying. So I sat down with him, and I sat down with myself first, asked, well, why is this my response? Why am I responding to him this way? So some of that was my own trauma. That's how I was raised.
Right.
And it's like, you know, and so then the next question was, I had to ask him, well, why does it make you feel like this? And so he was able to express why it made him feel. And I said, okay, now when you do this, this makes daddy feel like this. And this makes daddy want to respond like this. So what can we do at 7 years old?
Right.
I'm having to
That's so important. No conflict, and I wouldn't. Yeah, but conflict resolution. How do you have a difficult conversation with somebody that you love and you care about? And so I think that's such an important skill to demonstrate.
Yeah, man. And he came up with. I said, what can we do to fix this issue when it comes to if you don't do something I asked you to do or supposed to do or whatever? And we came up with a creative solution. And so I said, okay. Now when he's 7, 8, 9 years old now, and so when he's doing something that pushes me to that place, I say to him, hey, now you had this conversation with me. You said this. Now you're not holding up your end of the bargain, which makes me feel this way. So I don't believe in soft parenting. I'm going to say that for the record. I believe in medium parenting. So
I think where discipline doesn't exist, there is no love, right? And so that's, but we moved away from spanking very early on is because for us, it was like, again, my kids were, if we can have a rational conversation, let's have a rational conversation. And that was something that I learned from my grandfather. But I learned it from my grandfather. My grandfather, it was enough for him just to be disappointed at me. And the things that he had me do is he didn't treat me like an equal, but he treated me as a rational being.
Yes.
And so every morning when I woke up, he drunk his coffee. I read the paper to him, right? Reinforcing those skills. We debated about topics in the news, and he didn't, you don't have an opinion on this because you're just a little kid. No, let's think through these ideas. Let's share. Let's go back and forth. And I think that's critically important. So for those of you that are tuning in, our guest tonight is Dr. Robert Marshall.
Yo.
We only got, a few minutes left, but we are super excited that he was able to join us. For those of you that are just tuning in, you can get your chance to win a Fathers Matters hat. Just go ahead and share this live video. We appreciate all of those that are commenting and interacting with us and engaging. This is our first time. This is our first in our series of collaborations between Lake County Media Group and Fathers Matters. We're going to be coming live with a couple dope interviews. Next week, we got Renee Rosamine, who will be on to talk about, she's an attorney. She's an attorney who represents fathers exclusively in family court. So that's going to be important. Yeah. But one of the questions that we got, because we get a lot of people who reach out, and I really do appreciate this question. I don't have time to read it all, but what they talk about is sometimes the struggle between being a firm dad who enforces rules. So it's great that we ended on that or started on that conversation, but compassionate dad who is there to listen and guide with love. He said, how do you handle situations where both sides of you, disciplinarian and nurturer, are in conflict?
Okay, so this is just for me, and no kid is the same, no parent. So for me, I show up differently. Number one, I extend the grace to my children that I wish I had but never got. Mm-hmm. Number two, when it comes to my children, I show up more so as the disciplinarian when I see behaviors that could potentially be harmful to them if they continue to grow in their future. So if they're lying, if they're stealing, if I see continued mischievousness, like I have one of my children who
always at least one,
right? Who does things? I won't say which one because I want to.
No, I got you.
But this child typically doesn't tell the truth when somebody hit them, or if they'll say, "Oh, he hit me," or this person hit me and they didn't. And in my head, I'm like, that will get you killed in life. So let me address this issue, because if this issue continues to grow with them, then this will be problematic. So I address issues that I think and behaviors that I think and see could be detrimental to them as human beings as they get older.
And I think that's so important. I'm working on that balance all the time, but I think it's with you is right now with both of my oldest two, it's much more, which I appreciate my father for, but consultative, right? It's because I have to prepare them for a world where I can't just tell them yes or no. But my father, when we talk about boundaries, Ronell Ewing, I'm gonna get him on the pod one day because I learned so many lessons from that man. The day I graduated at 18, I walked off the stage. He shook my hand. He said, "This now ends my financial obligation to you. Anything from this point on is a gift. You can stay in my house as long as you want to, and I welcome you, but you gotta abide by my rules.
Yeah.
And if you want to go out, I support that too. And you be free."
Yeah.
But these are kind of the decisions. But that was the approach. Is you got sometimes in life there are binary choices.
Yeah.
And so I think it transitions from when my kids were younger, to the writer. And you do have to flex. So I think sometimes just follow your intuition is because sometimes in that moment you need to be nurturing.
Yeah.
And sometimes in that moment you need to be the disciplinarian. And that conflict is your intuition as a parent, understanding which one shows up, right? And if you're doing the work that Dr. Marshall talked about around healing, right, then you aren't. That's the one thing. The one rule that we had is we try not to parent angry. Yeah. So if I know that there's something in the behavior, I'm not going to react out of anger. Hey, I need you to go to your room. I'm gonna go to my room. It's 5 o'clock. At 7:30, we're gonna have a conversation.
See, back in the day, I was getting a whooping.
Oh,
woo!
And the one thing, and I learned that from even in the interaction. My oldest got a different parent than my youngest, my 9-year-old. Like those are two very different people. And my 9-year-old did something the other day that I thought was, like you said, I would have got backhanded for. And so I said, "Hey, can you come pick up this, he had left something out. Can you come pick this up?" And he said, "Yes, I will." But he didn't get up, right? And so he's playing this video game. And I said, "Hey, I asked you if you can, come get this thing up." And he said, "Dad, I want to get it up." He said, "But I've been playing this level for 40 minutes and I'm at the end. I got 3 minutes left and I can beat this level. And then if it's okay with you, I'll get up and clean it up." And I said, "You know what? That's perfectly rational. Is there something that it didn't matter to me about that video game? Boy, my mama would have unplugged the video game.
Not my mama, my wife would have snatched everything out of it.
But that is because he got it was important to him.
I hear you.
And he acknowledged me. He said, "I'm going to do it."
You.
Now, if I come back down here in 10 minutes and it's not done, now we have a problem. But having that level of discourse and conversation, I think is important, is because that's something that we didn't have. Like that whole thing is like, "I don't think you love me. Oh, I give you somebody. I feed you. I do all of that other stuff I do for you." But you had that conversation. Now
that's good. That's good though.
We wrapping up, and so I do want to shout out because we had a situation. We talk about this is called Dad's Reacts, right? So Brandon Holmes, who is on the Crazy Riot show, had this statement, and I just wanted to get your reaction. So he was talking in regards to his relationship with his mother and some of the behaviors and why that created a level of resentment. He says, "She shouldn't be the person who decides what I feel based on how my father has a relationship with me. Sometimes a day might be just enough for me. My mom shouldn't be the one to tell my father what he is or isn't going to do for me. If he can give me a day, let me get my day. If he can give me a weekend, just let me get my weekend, because it doesn't, just because it doesn't suffice what you want for me, doesn't mean it's not good for me." And I think just wanted to kind of get your opinion on that as we begin to wrap up.
Sometimes parents, and especially moms, sometimes parent out of their own brokenness and their expectations that they wish they would have had for themselves growing up as children, right? That can be projected onto their children. Number two, understanding mom-dad relationships. You know, that was somebody she laid down with at one point in time, and they got it on. And whether she was in love or not in love, there's so many levels to that. And may desire a relationship with the father, and the father's like, yeah, nah, has moved on and still wants that access. And sometimes uses the child to weaponizes their child to get access. And another thing is, you know, for somebody who grew up without a father, sometimes enough is enough, right? And and I think mothers at times don't understand the full picture. And it's okay to want more, and there's healthy ways to express that. Mm-hmm. But that is not your job to let some certain things kids shouldn't know. They shouldn't be in the room for. They shouldn't know. They shouldn't be aware of those conversations.
That's important, yeah.
Right? And even as an adult, right, at this point, even the relationship with my father and my family, like, it has nothing to do with my mom now. Mm-hmm. This is not even about her. This is not about her life. This is not about her story. This is my life. This is my story. This is my truth. And I have the power to choose the narrative, and I have the power to decide what this is going to be. And at some point, as if you're an older man navigating a relationship with your father, like, yo, hey, this is your life. This is your story. You don't have to include your mom in the conversations, in the relationship. She's lived her life. She's done her thing. It's about you and what you need and what the future looks like for you.
That's super important. So where can the people find you, follow you, purchase books, all that good stuff?
Man, you can follow me on any social media platform. Robert at Robert H. Marshall Jr. at Robert H. Marshall Jr. That's Instagram, Facebook. I'm a lot on Instagram. I'm on there a lot. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, but you can also go to my website, roberthmarshall.com. You go there, the survivorcircle.org. If you're a male survivor navigating sexual abuse, sexual trauma, you can go to the survivorscircle.org. Come party with us, man. Ewing, I hope you can be there. The 30th of this month, November, we are going to have the Survivors Bash, where it's downtown at Sneakerhead University. Dope spot. Okay. Sneaker ball kind of space where we're just going to be partying and dancing it up. All my books are on my website. I just wrote a book called Shame is a Liar. It's a book for men who are navigating systems of shame. Go grab it on Amazon. Yeah, Little Brown Boy for your kids. It's a thing.
That's what's up. So as we close, couple shout outs. We didn't get to it, but Dads in the News. There are individuals in Flint, Michigan that had a fatherhood forum. Sean Hart, the co-founder and executive director of Involved Dad. Shout out to them. Hoping to get them on the pod coming up. I'll make sure that I share the article out there, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what that was in an upcoming show. With that said, I know I'm not Carlos Smith. He was supposed to be here with us, but he's double booked. This is Brandon Ewing. This is our collaboration between Lake County Unfiltered, Lake County Media Group, and Fathers Matters. And so thank you for joining us for this powerful conversation. This episode was brought to you in collaboration with Lake County Media Group and Fathers Matters, and proudly produced at True Conglomerate Studios. Shout out to True. Together, we're committed to sharing stories that inspire, empower, and create meaningful change. Shout out to our sponsor, the Community Works, TCW, who helped bring this conversation to you. With that, have a great night, and we'll see you all next Wednesday.
Felt discouraged about your future or what career path to take? The Community Works can help you. We help create opportunities for young adults and adults using reliable resources, all while helping you find your superpower. Whether administrative or work in the trades, we're here to help steer you in the right direction that fits your skill set to secure employment. We take pride in being a reliable resource that assists in making the community a place where dreams come true. So come to TCW, the Community Works, where heroes are born.